Hi, I'm Barbara Wigan. I'm with the Caring Arts Foundation. Caring Arts brings music and art programming to cancer patients throughout the Chicagoland area. We normally do this at hospitals or cancer support communities, but of course, right now, we all have to be at home. So we decided to create these videos so you can make use of some simple materials that hopefully you have on hand and create some new interesting projects. And we have a variety of projects on our YouTube channel, so I hope you'll check them out. We also have some great music performances there, so please feel free to take a look at all of them. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to create some landscapes. But guess what? You don't need any paint. This is really, really easy, and all you need is a selection of papers, really. So I'm going to show you the couple of materials that you need, and I'm going to show you 3 different projects that make use of slightly different kinds of materials and different techniques, and then you can pick and choose and do things however you like, because that's always the best way to do things, your way. So what you need first is a base piece of paper. This is basically our canvas. I have a piece of white cardstock here. It should be something a little bit heavier than just regular paper, just so it holds up to the glue. You can make use of a piece of cardboard. It doesn't really matter the size, but I'm keeping things kind of small just because it's easier to get started here. So in addition to that, you need a selection of papers. Now for the first project we're going to do, I'm going to use just construction paper. And you can do these in any colors you like. I have a selection of colors here. You can find construction paper pretty much anywhere. For sure the drugstore has it. And you need a glue stick, a number 10 pencil, maybe. I don't always use those, but you might need a scissors, although for the first project, we're not going to use the scissors at all, but you'll need one eventually. And then you need a straight edge or a ruler. I have 2 different types here, a metal one or a plastic one. You can use a wooden one. It doesn't matter. You can use the edge of something that's just firm and straight. Really, any of those things work. And then for some of our other projects, not for this one, but for some of the others, you need a selection of things to make circles with. I have 2 different sized plastic cups. I have some plastic caps off of off the milk carton or off the juice carton. It doesn't really matter what size or how many there are, just a selection of them. We're going to make use of those in the next project, but I just wanted to get you guys prepared. And then for the last project we do, you're going to need either a silver or a gold pencil, or you can have a silver or a gold Sharpie, that would work. Or if you have some white tempera paint, that will work as well, or maybe some silver paint. And then either a very small brush or an old toothbrush. And I'm going to show you a cool technique, and you can use any of those things. So you don't need to have them all. If you have just one of them, that'll be fine. So this is the first landscape we're going to create. And this one's really super easy. They're actually all very easy. But for this, all you need is the construction paper, your base sheet of paper, and that's it. And some glue. You need the glue stick. Also, make sure you've protected your surface to work on, just so you don't get glue on your table or your tablecloth. So to get started, we're going to start with the sky. I'm going to recreate this again so you can see exactly how I did it, but you guys don't need to make this. You should make whatever strikes your fancy. So to do this, I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm just going to rip the edge of the paper, the blue paper, because I like messy things. I don't like straight edges. I like raggedy edges and things like that. So I'm just I rip this so I get this nice ripped jaggy edge. And I'm going to warn you right now, don't worry about anything being perfect, because we're kind of letting the paper take us wherever it's going to take us. It's a journey, so we're going to go along with this. So now that I ripped off the top half, I'm going to rip the sides too. So, and it really doesn't matter what size your paper ends up to be. So I now have a ripped edge on two sides of my paper, and I'm going to rip the other long side as well. And there we go. We have these nice jaggedy edges. And that's going to make the frame. So if I put that, we're going to glue it down, but if I put that on the end of my paper where these two sides are kind of equal, it creates a nice frame. You could just put it in an actual picture frame when you're done. So anyway, and then the next thing I'm going to do is cut out these mountains, these white mountains here. Now you could actually take a piece of white paper and just tear that and make the mountains and paste them on top of the blue paper. That's one way to do it. I'm going to actually make use of negative space. So in my version here, the white is actually the base sheet of paper. It's my canvas. So I'm going to do that by taking my blue paper and I'm going to go about halfway down, maybe a little more than halfway. And I'm just going to start ripping something that kind of looks like mountains. Let's just sort of go up and down here. There's no special way to do this. It's really about letting the paper do what it's going to do. So I have an interesting mountain view here. Now, if there's something here that you don't exactly like, and you can always go back and trim a little more paper. So you can certainly do this however you like. But I like to sort of let the paper take me where it's going to go. So now I have my mountains, and I'm going to paste this blue down on the paper to give me a base. So I'm going to take my glue sticks. I have some extra sheets of paper here. I just took them out of my printer. And I'm going to glue on top of those. So I take my glue stick, and I put some glue along the edge. Actually along all the edges. And then kind of put a bunch of glue all through the middle. You don't have to cover it completely. And then I'm going to put it down on my paper. Kind of making it even on the top and the sides, but it doesn't really matter. And there I go, I've got my mountains. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to create some kind of foothills in the front here. I used orange and black to do that. You can use whatever colors you like. So let's see, I'm going to take a piece of orange paper and I'm just going to, again, rip it. Now I don't want this to be too jaggy. I want it to be maybe a little more, not like it's high mountains, but more like they're low mountains or foothills. So I've got this here, and then I'm going to again rip the edges also. So I'm going to take my straight edge and rip the edge. And I want to kind of line it up with my blue so that it's about the same width. So I'm going to do that. And then, again, just rip down. I'm going to rip a little more here. It really doesn't have to be perfect. So there you go. I'm going to put that down. Now I'm going to put that down a little lower so that I leave the white mountains showing. So once again, you put down glue along the edges. And in the middle. I'm running out of glue. go. I'm going to smash it down. So now I have my blue sky, my white mountains, and my orange foothill. And then I'm going to make another layer of foothills. Actually, this one was already kind of ripped up from what I did before. You know what? You can look for ripped pieces of paper too. Sometimes you can find some things that are more interesting. I think I'm going to make use of this. I'm kind of liking it. So, but what I do have to do is make sure it's about the same width as, again, my blue and my orange paper. So I'm going to rip off this end. And then I'm going to rip off the other end. There we go. So when I put that down, you can see it's about the same width as the blue and the orange. And I need to rip off the bottom too. So now I've got my black foothills, and I'm going to glue those down. I really am running out of glue. I should have got some more. So I'm actually going to show you something interesting here, because it's okay that I'm running out of glue. Because I'm not going to worry about gluing the top edge of it. So there we go. I've glued it down, but I've actually left the top not glued down. And sometimes it can create a cool little shadow, and I find that kind of interesting. So you don't have to glue everything down perfectly. And then I want some green grass in the foreground, kind of like this. So I'm going to take a sheet of green. And again, I'm going to rip it. Oh, it's getting a little bit too... I'm going to actually rip this with my straight edge, just so it's a little bit straighter. Because I want it to kind of look like grass. So I don't want it to look like mountains. I don't want it to be too jaggy. But again, do this however you like. The more interesting, the better. Now, there we go. I think it looks kind of like grass, don't you? So, and once again, I'm going to rip off both sides so it's the same width as the blue sky. And then again, I need to rip off the bottom. There we go. Kind of looks like a grassy field in the front, doesn't it? So we're going to glue that down. I am running out of glue here. There we go. There we go. And once again, I've left the end on top without any glue, so it sticks up just a little bit, casts a little shadow, and it's kind of interesting. Makes it look more like it's in front of the black foothills. And then the very last thing is I have to create a sun. So I'm going to take a piece of yellow, got a scrap of yellow here. And now if you like, you can actually make use of one of your circle templates, your caps, and figure out what size might work. And you can, if you like, draw around that with your pencil. So you have a circle, or you can just rip something that kind of looks like a circle. For this one, I didn't use a circle. I just ripped a round piece of paper. But if you want it to be more round, you could do that. And then just kind of follow around as you rip it around the pencil line. Don't worry if it's not perfect. It doesn't need to be. It's more interesting if it isn't, actually. So there we go. I've got my sun. I'm going to glue that down. If I can get enough glue out here. Ah, there we go. Glue down my sun. And there we have a landscape, all done. Now I'm going to show you a couple of other projects that make use of different kinds of paper and slightly different techniques. For this next one, I actually started this one already because I wanted to speed things up a little bit here. This is a kind of a forest of trees with a nice big sun. For this particular project, I have quite a selection of papers. I found some craft paper that I happen to have on hand. You could use construction paper. I found a bunch of like some wrapping paper, or this happens to be craft paper for scrapbooking if you're into scrapbooking, but I actually have some actual wrapping paper. I found some magazines, and what's cool, if you can find magazines that have a big image without a lot of writing on it, you can make use of that. You can make use of the writing as well. It doesn't really matter. I found a Harry and David catalog that had some full-page images. This is pears. That was kind of interesting. My husband's a musician and he has a bunch of guitar player magazines, so there were some nice big images of guitars. We're not going to cut out anything that looks like a guitar or a pear. And that's actually what I used to create my forest here. Actually, instead of tearing, we're going to cut this next one. But you might want to create your whole image in little pieces and lay all the pieces down without gluing them down first, just to get an idea of what everything looks like, which is how I did this one. So I actually took a piece of blue craft paper, and it was two-sided, green on one side and blue on the other. And when I ripped it, it made these nice white edges, which I kind of liked. So I ripped that for my background. If you can see that, and it has a nice white edge around it. And then I took a bunch of different papers, like my wrapping paper. This is a piece of wrapping paper, and my catalog paper, and some of the craft paper, and I used the scissors for this next part. And I just cut out some trees. I'm going to show an example. I'll show you the guitars here. I was trying to make use of all the different colors in here. So instead of cutting up and down the way the guitars are, I actually cut across them. I just cut something out that kind of looks like a tree. The fatter ones look like the trees are closer to you, and then I cut some skinny ones too that looks like the trees are farther apart. So if I lay that down, you can see it's got different colors, but you can't tell these were guitars at all. So I mixed up a bunch of different papers and just cut what looks like a bunch of trees, some a little fatter, some a little thinner. And then I took some of the different craft paper, and again, this is where I used my different size circles. So I took a piece of orange, and I wanted a big circle for the background, so I drew a big circle. like that. And then I did it with a couple of other different colors. And I think I'm going to do one more. I laid all these down. So I laid all the trees down, and I laid these different sized circles down. I'm going to cut one more. I'm going to use these pears because I kind of like the color of them. But let's see, I think I need, this is a good size. It's a little smaller than the last one I did. So you can hardly even see it, but I have a pencil line, make it a little round circle, and I'm just going to cut around that. You're not even going to be able to tell this was a pear. There you go. That is far from a perfect circle, and that makes it better. It's more interesting. So when I put that down, it's really starting to look like a sun now. I might cut one more for the middle. I think I will. Let's see, what other color do we have? How about bright yellow? That's why you put these things down first to kind of try them out. And it's good to do that. So if something doesn't work, just do it over. If you haven't glued it down yet, there's no problem. I'm going to make that bright yellow in the middle. It's always good to experiment, so that's what this is all about. It's not about perfection. There's no such thing. Oh, I like that better. There we go. I've got my sun. Okay? So I'm now going to start gluing all these pieces down. I've already glued some of them down just to save some time here. So most of my trees are glued down. I have just a couple more. I got a new glue stick. So I'm just going to put glue on my last couple of trees. Wow, it's sticking to my finger. I'm going to glue that down. And some go in front of others, which is good because it makes it look like a real forest that way. And this is a piece of wrapping paper. I think it was Father's Day paper or something, I don't know. But I like the colors. So that's something actually when you're planning what to do. Find colors that, different kinds of colors of paper that are kind of harmonious. And put those all together. Now, there we go. Now, you see I've left some of the bottom edges. I didn't glue those. I did that on purpose because I want them to line up with my blue background. So what I'm going to do is just put my fingernail on the very edge of the background, and I'm going to rip off those ends. You could also use your straight edge for that. But I like the jaggy edges. So there we go. Need a little more glue on this one. There we go. And I actually cut some little extra pieces to make stems from the trees, kind of branches going off to the side. So they're just tiny little pieces of paper. You could just glue those down. I think it makes it more interesting if it looks like the trees are crossing each other. So there you can see I added a little branch that goes across the other trees. And that makes it look like they're more three-dimensional and one's in front of the other. You could even take some of those pieces that I just ripped off and, glue some of those down. Really, just experiment and see what works. And now the last thing to do is to put my sun down because I had it so my sun was in front of the trees. Now that wouldn't normally be the case in nature, but I like to make the sun the focal point on this, and I thought it looked more interesting. So again, I'm actually going to glue this down so the sun goes off the top. Why? No particular reason. I just like it that way. You know, kids have no problem at all creating this way. Kids are really, truly creative beings. They don't need a reason for doing what they do. They just do whatever they see is the right thing in their minds. And it is, because it's theirs. So your art should be whatever you decide it is, and don't let anybody tell you anything else. So here we go. I'm going to paste my sun down. It's not a perfect circle, and it's going off the top, just because I like it that way. All right, now I'm going to do the next one. And to make it more interesting, I'm not going to put it right in the middle. But you can do that if you want. I'm going to kind of put it off center. So it's going to look like my sun is kind of radiating this way. But again, I don't need a reason. I'm going to do it just because I feel like it. All right, and now I have my pear that no longer looks like a pear. I'm going to put that down. And then my final yellow piece. My hands are getting sticky. I have a piece of paper towel. You might want to use that to wipe off your hands. All right. There we are. There's our forest with our beautiful sun. So I have one more project for you. For this last one, I again used a base of just plain white cardstock. I did kind of like that kind of brown, almost cardboard color. I really like that color a lot, but you can do this however you want, and anything works. But the paper for the bottom, your canvas, needs to be kind of sturdy, just so it holds up to the glue. So I decided I wanted to do something with a night scene. So again, this is another landscape, and this one makes use of rip paper again. You can cut it like I did the last one for the trees. For this one, I used a bunch of different craft papers. And again, when you cut these craft papers or when you tear them, you get that white edge. So I experimented, and I used some dark blues for the sky because I wanted a selection of colors that looked like it was nighttime. And then I tore out a bunch of different craft papers in different colors, all kind of dark because, again, it's supposed to look like night. So, and these are just laid down here because I wanted to get a feel and experiment a little bit with getting the right look and feel that I wanted. So you should do that. Tear up a bunch of paper and see where that takes you. I haven't glued these down yet. And obviously you have to start with whatever's the farthest behind and glue that down first. And that was my dark blue sky. So I'm going to take these other ones off for now. All these other pieces. And I've pasted down my overall dark blue, which is going to create both my darkest part of the sky and some water. And I'll show you, I'm going to make use of that negative space again, like with the first project. And I'll show you how that works in a second. And then I have another sheet of blue, which I pasted down. And then a third one, which is just a little bit lighter. And I'm going to paste that one down too. So again, you just get your glue. Make sure you're not getting glue on your tablecloth. So I'm using my scrap paper to do that. So now I've got this kind of graduated sky going from dark to light. And before I paste down the other things, the other elements, I want to add some stars. Now there's a couple different ways to do that. I'm going to show you, these are one of my favorite techniques. Depending on what you have at home, you can use just a simple silver pencil. Now the trick to drawing stars is they shouldn't be even, although they can be. There's really no rules. You can just draw little dots and make some bigger than others, but you should make sure that they're not evenly spaced so they look more natural. Or you can take either a silver or a gold Sharpie and do exactly the same thing. With the Sharpie, all you need to do is put a little dot on it, and if you put it a little harder, it'll get a bigger star. But this is my favorite technique of all that I wanted to show you. In order to do this, you need some paint. Now, tempera paint is probably about the perfect consistency, because consistency is really important for this. So it needs to be kind of watery. And tempera paint tends to be a little bit more on the watery side. If it's too thick, you should thin it out with some water. I didn't happen to have any tempera paint. I had acrylic paint that was white. So I just put some water in it and just kept stirring it up until it was pretty thin. And then, before I do it on here, I want to show you. So the technique is, if you take a very tiny brush and dip it into your paint and then just tap it, and you're going to get a selection of stars. This is also a great way to make snow. Now the thing is, you can't really control this, and you shouldn't worry about it. Whatever happens, happens. And then just let it dry and go with it. You could always add a little more. If you want to tap off, if you're worried about having too much paint, you can tap some off before you do it. Now you can do this same exact technique with an old toothbrush, and in some ways it's almost even better. So you dip the old toothbrush in there and tap it off, and then you just take your finger and brush it across the toothbrush, and you're actually going to get a spray of much smaller dots. And that's a really cool way to make something that looks like the night sky. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually use my toothbrush. Probably isn't necessary because I'm going to paste on top of this blue anyway, but I'm going to cover up the rest of the blue, and I'm going to just it's going to look kind of like a Milky Way. It's going to make a really nice spray of white, and your hand's going to get a little paint on it, so make sure you use some paper towel to get that off. And in fact, I think I want to add a couple of larger stars to mine, so I'm going to use the brush too and just tap. There we go, a couple of bigger stars. There we go. So I look like I have a night sky with some big stars and some little stars and a spray of Milky Way. And then once that's dry, I'm going to start putting my other pieces back. So I'm going to lay them down now and see how they look. Again. So the next couple pieces I'm going to put down are my brown foothills and my black mountains. And again, I have these torn so they go off the edge because I'm not sure exactly how I want to position them, so I can tear the ends off at the end. So I'm going to put my brown foothills down first. I think that looks pretty good. And then my black mountains. I like that. I'm going to go more this way. And then, again, you can take your straight edge and rip off the ends. Or you don't have to use the straight edge. My fingers are getting sticky. It happens. The life of an artist. Your fingers get messy. And then I'm going to put down what's in the foreground. Let's see. Okay, I have these little kind of a green sheet that, interesting texture on this paper. It's going to create kind of a sense of a field in the front. Again, all these papers are dark because I'm trying to make it look like it's nighttime, so everything is sort of dark. I'm going to tear off that end. Sticky hands. So I added some more Foothills in the front. This is wrapping paper with some stripes. And I tore that up. And I'm going to put that down. Creates kind of a mountain, but more in the foreground. Ripped off my end. So you can see my end, every time I put a piece down, I just ripped off the end to be kind of equal with what was there. You can use the ruler or not. I think it's more interesting sometimes to not use the ruler. You get a less straight edge, and I for this one I like that. So, and then there's two things in the front. Now you will see here my background paper, my dark blue background paper, which is also creating the sky, is still on the bottom here. We're going to let some of that show. That's the negative space I was talking about. And that's going to create a lake image. So I'm going to do one more layer on the bottom of black foothills. There we go. And then the last thing is going to be some grass in the foreground, kind of grass. There we go, I've got all my layers. So I have what looks like a night sky and all my different layers of foothills and mountains. And then I need my moon. I love the moon. I love a full moon. There's nothing I love more. The only thing is when there's a real full moon, you can't really see the stars very well. So we're going to pretend. But I cut out 2 round pieces of paper. Now again, You can use the caps to make a round circle, or you can just freehand it. But I use two pieces. I have a light blue and a white to create the moon. So I'm going to paste those down. And then my white moon. And again, I didn't put it right in the middle. You can, I just think it's more interesting when you don't. And there we go, I've got a starry sky and a moon and my foothills. And I'm gonna do one more thing. So you see my blue water down here. When there's a full moon, and it's shining on water, it's going to make a reflection. And I don't have a reflection here. So I'm going to take, you can take anything. You can take your silver pencil or your silver marker or the white paint. Any of those things work. But just to create a reflection of the moon shining in the water. It works just as well if you use the paint. And then one more thing I'm going to do. I'm going to take my number 10 pencil. And you know, when you look at the full moon, there's a face, a man in the moon. I'm gonna just very lightly add a sense of craters in the moon. I'm gonna smudge them. It's very subtle, but there we go. There's my final landscape. So you guys can make use of all of these techniques or any one of them or put them together. The key is to experiment, have fun, let this take you wherever it's going to go. Put on some great music because that always helps to create great art, and enjoy. And we'll bring you some more projects soon, and have a great time doing this.